Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
Hey, this is Merps, and we are firmly in the new expansion. Pretty exciting.
Yep, LOE is out. It came out on Thursday, and it just normally there's so much hype for like an expansion to come out, just because it builds up over like a month. And this time Blizzard was just like, nope, nope, no one needs the hype. We're just gonna come out with it. So I don't even think I was really prepared for it when I stepped into the LOE meta, and it was just like I don't know how you felt going into it, but like everything's different, and this is just the first wing.
At first, it was hard to notice because unlike a big expansion that just drops all these cards on you, this is coming out wing by wing, and each wing is pretty small. So I kind of didn't even remember. Like I would constantly forget about the new cards, and when I would see them in the arena, I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, there's a new card!" And suddenly 5 minutes later, I would forget, and then I see a new card. It's like Christmas all over again.
I don't know about Christmas. It's like the opposite of Christmas. It's like when Santa comes and kills your minions for no good reason.
Well, it's a good thing nothing is that powerful just yet. So
Sacred Trials. I don't know if you've lost stuff to Sacred Trials, but this has happened to me multiple times.
we've lost something to Sacred Trials together. I didn't know it happened to you more often.
Yeah.
That's your fault, not mine.
But yeah, you test for everything, and then you're like, what is it? Oh, I don't know. Let's just play some more minions. And boom, your minion's gone for no good reason.
Yep.
So yeah, I think one of the reasons that OE is it feels so different isn't even because of the new cards. Because like there's not that many new cards. They don't have the plus 25% offering bonus yet. They're not going to pick that up until the Wing 4 is released. So that's like the second week of December.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why you're not seeing a lot of the new cards, even the ones that are released. Like they're not overtaking the meta or anything like that. And from what we were talking about last week, we didn't think they would overtake the meta. But the meta has still really, really changed, I think, because I'm 100% convinced, just from my experiences here and talking to people, that there's no more TGT bonus.
Yeah, and we don't have anything concrete to back that up. It's mostly a feel, and also
Wild
you
speculation.
well, I wouldn't call it wild speculation. It's based on our own experience, it's based on other players' experiences, and it's also based on what we see the opponents playing as well. Whenever you faced the opponent, you would expect to see a lot of class TGT cards, and that just isn't happening anymore. So, for all of you people who are sick and tired of facing Murloc Knights, Seal of Champions, Murloc Knights being buffed up by Seal of Champions, rejoice because, well, maybe rejoice because we think the offering rate has been taken away, which should change the meta significantly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree, and it just goes it goes faster now, right? TGT's main thing is that it slowed down the meta. Well, and then I think our general hypothesis was that LOE is also going to slow down the meta, so it's not going to be a big problem eventually when it happens. But we're in this middle zone right now where the TGT, we have slowed down the meta plus 25% offering rate to TGT cards thing is gone. And the new plus 25% to LOE rate is not in yet, nor are like most of the LOE cards for that matter. So we're in this middle zone where some of the factors that we expect to be slowing down the meta have just not come through yet. I mean, they will, but that's not going to happen until mid-December. So in this zone, if you're wondering like how things could be better in this zone, I mean how you can play better, it's that you should expect things to be a little more aggro than you would normally expect it.
Yeah, and also we will see a little bit more board clears as well, right? One of the
Yeah.
things that we warned people about when TGT came out was, well, since they're offering more of these TGT cards, notice how there's no Flame Strike, there's no Consecration, there's no Lightning Storm in there. Hunter's got a good card and Power Shot, but that was a rare. And you really miss these tools that you can use to get mass board clears. And now, if we're talking about the TGT offering bonus gone, that also means that these other cards that were kind of held down a little bit, they're back. So expect those double flame strikes.
I've been double flame strike a number of times already.
Hmm.
I mean, I back in TGT, God, it's already in past tense. Back in TGT, I was very much the whole like, don't play around Flame Strike all the time. Like if you can effectively play around Flame Strike, obviously do it. But if you feel like you can't, just go into it. Most of the time you'll be fine because people just don't have Flame Strikes and they don't draw it, and no one's mulliganing for it, so you'll be okay. It's kind of, at least in this in-between meta, we'll call it the transition meta. In the transition meta of LOE, it's not fine. The Flame Strikes are back. I'm now playing around it all the time again, just because otherwise you get wrecked. That's my experience, at least.
Yeah, and this is quite refreshing, I have to say. Well, it's not refreshing to get Flame Striked twice.
No, I like getting Flame Striked.
You do. You are some sort of masochistic Hearthstone weirdo, but that can be for another podcast. What we want to talk about now is that this is an interesting way to really impact the meta. And before, when I learned about the increased offering rate in TGT, I really didn't like it. I thought it was a very it was a very forceful way to have you take these new cards, and it was pretty unbalanced as well. But now that they're taking it away, I'm like, oh, there's the up and the down, right? You have to consider both. And when they take it away, it feels like we're playing a different game again. Yeah. And now it's, by doing nothing, by basically taking it back to the status quo, the norm, it's almost as if we're playing a different game. The meta is shifting, new strategies are involved. And this is what we always want, to keep the game fresh. You want to be able to kind of test out the meta and then try to master it, and then it's on to the next one.
Right. And I like going back because a lot of and I think there may even be, we don't have any confirmation for any of this, but there may even be other things that they fiddled with the offering rates. We don't know. Blizzard never tells people this, but people will figure this out eventually in like a week or so, maybe 2 weeks, and then we'll have more information. But I've been seeing a lot more classic cards. I've just been seeing like double fireball decks totally exist again, whereas they were pretty much non-existent in TGT, or so rare. And so one of the issues with TGT was that mages found it really hard to go aggressive. You just, mana worms were down, fireballs were down. You had a lot more tools to go slower, but the tools that you needed to go fast and make an actual aggro mage were gone. While in Classic, aggro mage was like 50% of the mages that you saw, because they had such a easy way to cheat mana and to cheat tempo compared to other classes. Now all the classes can cheat tempo, so mage is not really special, but mage actually just got diluted so much that they had to rely on their late game. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people saw them as like the third best class in TGT, below Paladin and Rogue. And now in this new meta, especially with that new Mage card coming out, I think Mage will be very solidly like making a comeback.
Yeah, and time will tell exactly how the meta will shape up. But I think that Mage will definitely be strong, and I don't think we'll see a huge shift in any of the classes. But yeah, I definitely like where Mage is heading, and I think that card is a pretty premium card. Although we can leave the card discussion to another time.
Yeah. Okay. Best moment so far in LOE. Because we've been playing like Thursday night, Friday night, all of Saturday essentially. You're even playing Saturday night with Hafu, just like randomly, I think. So yeah, we've gotten like a lot of LOE experience for how short of amount of time LOE's been out. What was your favorite LOE moment so far?
Okay, my favorite LOE moment, and it's only my favorite LOE moment because I can take a step back and kind of assess the situation, because it was not a good thing that happened to me. Someone dropped, so a mage on an empty board dropped Summoning Stone on turn 6. And on turn 7, Flame Striked and got a capture.
Wait, you didn't kill the Summoning Stone?
I couldn't.
That's when you fireball that thing.
Oh, well, I wish I had something, but I didn't. I could only drop minions that didn't have charge, and I was proceeded. I faced Flame Strike into captured Jormungandr, and then the next turn I dropped more minions in the hopes of killing off the Summoning Stone, and he Flame Striked again, summoned an Adric, the Pure, and that was
that's really good. That's like actually like a really small minion for a 7 mana cost.
I was just waiting for the Pyroblast to my face and to summon a Deathwing. So, But
The
that was
ultimate
my
BM.
favorite, quote unquote, favorite moment.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and like I like that stone. I think we had some internal discussions before when we were rating the card, and I was like, it could be pretty good. And Merps was like, yeah, but it could be pretty bad. And we ended up, it's a 30. So we've actually released all the tier scores for the Wing 1 just like an hour before this, actually, before the taping of this on Sunday. And we wanted to do it earlier, but a lot of stuff got in the way. From now on, we'll be releasing our tier list like on the day that the actual wing is released. So you'll get all the numbers there. And our tier list, by the way, if you guys are wondering, has moved to a new home at Grinning Goat, at GGoat Gaming, ggoatgaming.com/tier list. And there's also a Google Docs link on there, and just keeping everything out in the open. So that's where the tier list will be updated from now on. Because we have in the last week left Hearth Arena, if you guys didn't know. And if you want to look up the reasons for that, it's all over Reddit and the internet, and you can find and figure it out yourself. But we're keeping a silence on the details after that first day, because we just don't want this to be a continued distraction. Like, Hearth Arena is a very big website, and it will continue to remain relevant in the Arena community, and we have all this content, and we'll continue to remain relevant in the Arena community. So it's just best at this point to not keep talking about it. I feel like we've said all that we wanted to.
Yeah, expansion time.
Yeah. And so for my favorite moment in LOE so far is when, well, again, it's the same, right? That's actually kind of weird. We don't have favorite moments in LOE where we're doing well. Because my moment is going to be when I got totally screwed over, too.
All right, let's hear it.
That's okay. So, and this is despite, I think maybe that's why it stands out, right? Like, so far with all of our runs, we're averaging a combined like 11 wins per run.
Yep.
In LOE.
Sample size of 5 runs.
Yeah, 5 runs. But not necessarily the top classes either. Kind of a nice spread of the classes. So that's going to go down. But so far so good. But the most memorable moment was when I was a priest, and I had set up a board of like 2 8 health minions or something like that against a hunter, and I was basically just going to win, and it was impossible for him to come back. And he scarabed into a deadly shot. And this was, I think, on the first time I ever played LOE, so I didn't know about the odds of which the scarab can get a deadly shot or anything else. I was just like, oh, a 3 mana card, what are the odds he actually gets deadly shot? Because that was the only card that could help him at the time. So he gets his deadly shot, he Hunter's Marks the other guy, and then boom, with 7 mana, he was fully on the board, and I was fully off the board. And I had 7 to 9 health minions on the board, all ready to be healed, all ready to destroy him. And this is, so that was kind of a moment when I was like, oh, what's going on with these offering odds, right? Maybe I just got really lucky, but maybe not. And the next day, or even that same night, I don't know, I found it the next day, there's this post on Reddit where someone is actually tracking all the cards that are popping up in Discover. And they realized that there was no way Discover was actually showing you random cards. Discover actually shows you, and they collected a whole bunch of stats for this, something like a 5.5 multiplier for class cards. So a class card is 5.5 or 5.5 times as likely to be offered to you using a Discover mechanic as a regular card.
Yeah, we saw this, and this changes everything, guys. Because when ADWCTA and I sat down to evaluate cards at first, we just assumed that, when Blizzard shows this, there wouldn't be some hidden numbers behind it. And we just thought, everything will get the same offering rate. And that's why we thought cards, for example, like Dark Peddler would be pretty good, but not fantastic. But with this, it changes everything. Suddenly, cards like Dark Peddler have a great chance of giving you those premium 1 mana cards that Warlock has, such as Soulfire, Mortal Coil, Power Overwhelming, just really good cards. And with a 2 mana for a 2/2 body, which is almost like a better cycle almost.
Yeah. And that's something that, like, we originally thought Dark Peddler was a really good card already before we knew this, and we thought all cards were evenly distributed. All card odds were evenly distributed, so this makes it even better. And it really changes the shape of things like Scarab, which, you know, was kind of an okay-ish card, and now for certain classes like Hunter and Paladin, like think about Paladin with the Scarab, right? Seal of Champions, Muster for Battle, Outdoor Peacekeeper, Coghammer, like the list just goes on for like just ridiculous Paladin cards, and you only need to be offered one of them out of your 3 choices for you to pick it. So it's pretty high odds to get like a really elite card for the Paladin, because Paladin needed another good common card.
Yeah, exactly. And sadly, so for those of you out there, we actually went through all the 3 mana cards for each class and also evaluated the neutral 3 mana cards as well and did a comparison. So the biggest losers in what I would call the Jeweled Scarab lottery are the Warrior, sadly, as if the Warrior needed something else bringing it down. And the Mage, they're basically tied for last, with the Mage having a larger pool as well, which is bad. You don't want a large pool of really bad cards. And the winner, like you stated, is Paladin, and coming in second place is Hunter, but Paladin is number 1 by far. And we could see why. Paladin has very good cards such as Coghammer, Muster for Battle, Outdoor Peacekeeper, Seal of Champions. It's almost unfair, the cards that they get to discover. And on the flip side, you could see for Warrior, they have stuff like Shield Block, Warsong Commander, oh, what could have been, and something like Bouncing Blade, which is just really situational, subpar. And if you're going to anti-tempo yourself with a 2 mana 1/1, then you need kind of an overpowered card to get you back. And that is not the case with like classes such as the Mage and the Warrior.
Yep, totally true. So those are our current hypothesis and the current community's feel for what the odds are for this Discover mechanic. No one really knows, because, and this is one of the issues that, you know, we talked about before when we found out in that TGT, because Ben Brode released, like Ben Brode was on The Angry Chicken, and Ben Brode talked about the TGT offering odds, and that was the first time anyone was like clued in on the fact that, oh, TGT actually had more offering chances than other cards since TGT was released. People kind of had a feel for it, but like no one could figure that out, and so we went in and found out that it was 25%. Well, now the meta's changed again. They released a new expansion. They told us something, right? Like one of the developers and one of the interviewers said that the LOE offering odds will not increase until the last wing is out, and that, you know, I think they also said that it will be 25% still. I'm not sure if they've confirmed it, but there's still no official places on here. Like, this stuff should be in like patch notes. There should be some kind of an announcement. We don't know what's going on in this in-between time that's, you know, frankly, it's 4 weeks long. This is a long time in the meta. This is like the actual TGT meta only lasted for like 2.5 months. This is going to be an entire month of transition period, and we don't really know what all the offering rates are. And more than that, for the Discover mechanic, which will continue on past this meta for, you know, the rest of however long this card stays in Hearthstone, the Discover mechanic we also don't know, right? Like, you're getting people who have to play against the innkeeper and keep playing these cards and then track what they're offered and then upload them onto a spreadsheet to like just try to figure this stuff out. This is unnecessary, right? Like, Blizzard could very easily tell us, because clearly they have some idea of what they're doing here, or else they would have just used the base amount. Like, they had an intention. This is not an accident, right? They said, we think Discover will be a more fun mechanic, a better mechanic, if it gets class cards a lot more often. And I think they're right. I really like that this is how it's done rather than true random, just because class cards are generally more fun, more interesting, and provides you with more opportunities to actually, you know, have the initiative to do something, right? Rather than just showing you 3 minions that are like of the same mana cost, and you're like, oh, do I want a 3/4 or do I want a, you know, 3/3 with a tiny ability? Or like this way, you're like, do I want a Deadly Shot? Do I want to Unleash the Hounds? Or do I want an Animal Companion? Ooh, like that's a real choice. So that I'm in support of, but they should really tell people. because we don't really know, right? There's another thread that just came on today that kind of, I think, I didn't read it too carefully, but because it was really long and complicated, but I think it half challenges the 5.5 multiplier that the other thread had found for like one card or something like that. So I don't
think the
even know.
I think the bottom line is really we're just not 100% sure. We
Yeah.
know the numbers are not like it's not the way that we thought it would be when they first introduced it, which is every card has an equal opportunity, equal representation. And now we know it's weighted, but we're not exactly sure how it's weighted or how much
Yeah.
it is weighted.
Yeah, and by we don't just mean we mean nobody.
Nobody,
Like,
yes.
Blizzard aside, nobody. Because all you really need is like one person to know and then tell everybody. And then we'll spread the word. But, so that's... Sorry.
By this time, I'm basically guessing that... so we're trying to find kind of a method to the madness, right? We're trying to see, like, what is this increased offering rate? What about this discover mechanic? How exactly is it weighed? You know what? In my mind, I'm thinking maybe Blizzard just like on a Tuesday, it's this offering rate. When there's a full moon, it's that offering rate, and just totally messes with us. I'm not saying this is what Blizzard does, but I would be like, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if they did that now. Everything is very cryptic, and I understand their reasoning as well. They want to make this game as simple as possible, and they want to make it accessible as well. But at the same time, there's these internal balances and tweaking. And they've done this with their previous games as well. I remember when we were playing Diablo 2, for example, there were lots of hidden things that in no way you could figure out just from casually playing the game. So this seems to be a Blizzard model in some sense, but it is frustrating for those of us who really want to understand the game.
Yeah, and like you can still tell people, right? You don't have to like force everyone to memorize it, but for the people who want to know, you should just like give it the information up somewhere. I don't know. That's how I think information should work. All right. Well, that's it for what our experiences are from LOE. Oh no, one more thing I want to say. We talked about how we have like 11 wins per run in our small sample size, but it really does feel easier right now, doesn't it? Like I felt the decks that I went 12 win runs with didn't feel like great decks. They weren't bad decks, but they also weren't great decks, and I never felt like, I was playing so well. Like they kind of felt like normal runs that would go somewhere between like 7 and 8 or maybe even 9, and they just kind of keep going until it hits 12.
That would make a lot of sense. With a new expansion comes new hype. Players who might have left the game would come back. Also, it would make sense for a lot of players who do play this to just play it all at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to get a bigger pool, and within that bigger pool, you probably have a smaller percentage of people who are at the top of the top in the arena. So I do believe all of this can contribute to an easier meta, and it just kind of makes sense. I don't think there's anything specific to LOE. It's just kind of what happens when an expansion rolls out.
Yeah, well, take advantage of it, guys. I really do think there's an easier meta, at least for the last few days, and I'm guessing for like a little bit longer as well. So get in the arena. And I also think, and maybe this is just me thinking it, but let's say you don't know if you want LOE, like you don't know how good the cards are, you don't know if you want to like, you're kind of a constructed player or something. Well, you could just go into arena and you can kind of play with and against those cards as well. Whereas otherwise you have to buy like the whole wing, which costs money and or a lot of gold. So I think that probably also adds to the higher number of less serious people in the arena right now.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Okay, so let's move on to a question from the GOAT.
Sure. So for a question from the GOAT, sometimes we talk about something a little bit silly or sometimes, digging into our personal lives. But for this one, because we would never talk about it in any other instance, I just want to ask you, how have you been finding the new adventure?
Oh, the actual adventure part of the new adventure?
Yes.
Well, I have been finding it very, very unplayed because
I
I have
see.
yet
I
to
suspected
actually.
this. I suspected this. And
What is this gotcha question on our own podcast?
no. I suspected this, and so number one, this is me calling out ADWCTA for really not enjoying all that Hearthstone has to offer. And also, I wanted to just tell you guys that I am having a complete blast.
Ugh.
That was this is the most fun I've had in non-arena Hearthstone in a long time, and I think
What
that
about the brawl that we did last week? Did
that
that
was
mean
a
nothing to you?
that nope, I have already forgotten
Oh
about that,
God.
and that is well beyond. But this is amazingly fun, and especially the last part of the wing, Escape from the Temple. I thought, a lot of people complain about Blizzard, kind of, not being innovative, not responding to
Okay,
Blizzard
okay, but no
demands.
spoilers, okay?
That's
Not,
fine.
not
I
just for our
thought
audience, but for me too. No spoilers, because I am going to buy the
no.
expansion
Well,
and I
first
do
of
want
all,
to play it.
you are probably the last person to play this, but I thought it was just a very good. It was very good implementation, and by bringing in this new sort of play style, it's just a reassurance that Blizzard will continue to innovate, that they will
Yeah, they'll
try to make
innovate
this game
out
more
things
fun.
and they'll innovate out these expansions and release them like 3 weeks earlier than we think.
Definitely.
But okay, so I normally buy the expansions ahead of time because they have like some kind of a discount for pre-ordering, and
Yeah.
I like to use it because we're Infinite Arena players. We don't need to give Blizzard any money. I have 30k gold, like literally sitting in my account doing nothing that I use for fun sometimes to buy some packs, but generally I don't touch. I could very well use that gold for buying these expansions, but I always use money just to support Blizzard. Except for this expansion, they rushed the release so much that I don't think there was a deal, right, to buy all 4 wings.
For gold or
No, for cash. Like it's not
No,
cheaper to buy all 4 wings.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't check.
I didn't check either, but if there was, they didn't announce it like that. Like, so I didn't know. And so I actually didn't go out and like buy all of it. And I hope it's not too late if there is a deal. But it's one of those things where it's one of the downsides of getting the release date so early, from, I guess, like Blizzard's perspective. But who knows? I'm going to buy it eventually. And maybe it's time that I use some of my gold.
Wow.
We'll see. But yeah, so I am going to get the expansion, and actually get the expansion, not just use it in the arena.
I look forward to spectating you and seeing you fail at all the wings.
It's so different for like a purely arena player to go and do these things where you have to like build your own deck, because people already all have like decks, right? Like everyone has a few decks, and they know how to play their decks. And they know their weaknesses and they know their strengths, and they kind of like try to react to it in the expansion. I have like some Face Hunter deck from like from GVG, I think, that I still have a list of, and so that's probably what I'm going to take into the expansion. And I'm not going to know how to do anything.
All right, looking forward to it.
All right. Well, now's about the time in the middle of the show when we thank our Patreons. This show has no sponsors. It is supported entirely by you, the listener. And you can support us at patreon.com/grinninggoat. Grinning Goat is, I guess, our company. Feels weird to call it like that. It's the stuff that we do all of our gaming content under. And for this month, our top Patreons are 4P, Banguin, Capsize Games, HT Rajan, Matt H, Paul H, Ugbog, and Zaruvi. So thank you guys so much for supporting us and our content, and we hope more people will support us to feed the goat and keep this Lightforge running. So let's move on to, I think, what everyone's really been waiting for, after we just talked about, not terribly important things for the last half hour.
Yep.
And that is the LOE Wing 2. LOE Wing 2 is going to have some cards.
Wow. Boldest statement I've ever heard.
It's
crazy.
I'm going to go as far to say that is just a fact.
Yeah, blowing my mind, man.
And it will have good cards and it will have bad cards.
Let's not get into too many crazy statements in one podcast, all right?
And some of the good cards will be played and most of the bad cards will be rarely played.
Yes, indeed. All right, drop some more knowledge on me.
But before we get to these good or bad cards, let's actually do two cards that, because we actually should have done this last week, and we did not know that the release schedule was going to be like this. And it's the Explorer's Hat and the Forgotten Torch. Because we said we covered all Wing 1 cards. And that's right, we did cover all Wing 1 cards last week. But we missed the two cards that weren't technically part of any wings and just kind of get unlocked as soon as you buy the adventure. And so it turns out you just get two cards right off the bat. And one is the Explorer's Hat and one is the Forgotten Torch. So we already have the ratings for these out. So why don't we talk about the Explorer's Hat? You want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start. So once again, like you said, our scores are out. So we rated Explorer's Hat at around a 44. Part of the reasoning is because right now, the strength of the Hunter class is going a bit more aggressive. It is quite hard to play a control Hunter, mostly just because your lack of a hero power that affects the board, if you're playing control style, will really shine, will really show turn after turn. And after like 10 turns, 15 turns, if you're playing control style versus the ping class, you're just going to get outvalued. This allows you to play a little bit slower. It basically is like an alternative hero power. But at the same time, it's quite slow, and it doesn't fit into the style that hunters have been playing for a long time, that the majority of their cards really push them towards, and their natural hero power, which is a more aggressive style of play. So this is good. It's almost like a hybrid kind of priest mage hero power, and then you can use it over and over again. But one of the reasons it's rated below average is just because it doesn't really fit with the hunter. Who knows? The meta might shift, but for now it's a 44.
Yeah, and like I said, like the playing it over and over again thing can happen on the same turn.
Yes.
So you Explorer's Hat something, you kill off the minion, basically using it as if it were like a mage hero power, and then you put it on your other minion and you do it again, and you keep getting this Explorer's Hat back. Again, it's anti-tempo, but it's pretty flexible, and I definitely screw that up the first time I used this card. I was doing a co-op run with Ratsma, and he like had this whole idea of what to do with it, and I still don't understand what the whole thing was, but I was just very not used to seeing the board and using a card in this way, because it involved bouncing this card back into your hand and then replaying it like 2 more times with the same effect. And I just started off and I was like, oh wait, I didn't kill that minion, and that stopped the whole turn. And we had to do something else for the rest of it. So it definitely takes some getting used to play this. Like, there is no shame in screwing up, or maybe there is shame and I should be ashamed.
There is
but
shame.
I'm going to say there is no shame in screwing up with this card, because it's such a unique and interesting card that we just haven't seen in Hearthstone yet. So I think it's a wonderful card, just in terms of adding more to the game. Although, again, not terribly great, but not awful either.
Definitely.
And the Forgotten Torch looks like a very simple card. It's 3 mana. You deal 3 damage, and then you shuffle a Roaring Torch into your deck that deals 6 damage. So the Roaring Torch is just another card, and if you draw it, it's a 3 mana 6 damage card.
Yep. And on the tier list, we have it scored at a 56, so a little bit above average, or you could really call it average. And 3 mana for 3 damage, a lot of the times it's basically a Wolf Rider, right? A lot of times it's a Wolf Rider, and no one is going to say that a Wolf Rider is great in value. And there's pros and cons to each one. If it's a spell, it can get past taunts, but Wolf Rider can get buffed. So there's pros and cons to both of these. But this card, one of the reasons it's not that bad is because even though you use 3 mana to deal 3 damage, which is not good, because usually the standard is 2 mana for 3 damage.
Yep.
You give up that 1 mana, but as a mage, you can play this control kind of very slow, value oriented game. So you stand a better chance of drawing that really good card, which is 3 mana for 6 damage. That's just an insane ratio. Fireball is 4 mana for 6 damage, and it's a top tier premium card in the arena.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a better fireball. Like, who doesn't want that, right?
Yep. So the problem, of course, is that you don't play Forgotten Torch on turn 3, most likely. You like
Yes.
find a way to squeeze it in, and then how many more cards are you going to draw? Right? Like that's one
Yeah.
of the issues. So it's really made for a more late game focused deck, and in a late game focused deck, you're not 100% sure that dealing 6 damage to a minion is like for 3 mana really matters. You kind of just care that it deals 6 damage to a minion. So
Yeah.
the actual upside of the card is questionably useful in the arena. Now, in something like Constructed or something, you can have a deck that has Arcane Intellects and has, other ways to draw your deck, and that'll make this incredibly good, potentially, right? But for Arena, the 3 mana 6 damage ratio looks amazing, and it is amazing, but it gets less and less amazing the more in a top deck situation you are, and the more it just becomes deal 6 damage, which again is still a good card to get in the late game, right? It's
Yeah,
not like
definitely.
you're drawing a 2-drop or 3-drop or even 4-drop. It'll remove all of those. It'll even remove a 5-drop and like half the 6 drops. So it's still a very high card advantage kind of card.
Yep. So overall, not bad. And these are the two cards that you just get when you buy the first wing of the expansion.
So they're already out. You're already using them. They're already in the meta. They did not change the meta all that much. But we just thought we'd give you the analysis. This is something we'll notice, right? Like, none of these cards in OE really changed the meta that much.
Yeah.
Warrior accepted. Even the ones that are really powerful don't change the meta, with one exception. I want to say there's only one exception, and it's actually a card in the second wing. So why don't we actually start there? And I know this is a card that you love and that I think is very good, but you are like in love with this card. It is Keeper of Udaman.
However you pronounce it.
It is 4 mana. It is a Paladin common, so now Paladins have one more high value common at 4 mana.
Yep.
Blizzard's really going with this, like, yeah, we'll keep giving Paladin good cards, but they're all going to be 4 mana, so deal with that, Paladin. And it is Battle Cry. It's a 4 mana of 3/4, so it has the same stat distribution in the beginning as a Murloc Knight, and rather than an Inspire mechanic, it has a Battle Cry that says set a minion's attack and health to 3. You get to choose which minion, but you don't get to like opt out of it. You have to set a minion's attack to health to 3. Even so, if you only have a Boulder Fist Ogre out and you only have 4 mana, you would have to reduce your own Boulder Fist Ogres. If the only minion on the board is your opponent's minion and it's less than a 3/3, you would have to make that into a 3/3.
Why are you focusing on the negatives, man?
I just hating a little. So what are the
Yeah.
positives? Why is this card so good in your mind?
I think this is a game changer for Paladin. And part of it is because it's a common card. So whenever you think of classes, there are defining features for each class. And part of the defining feature for Paladin is that it is a class that really likes to grab the board and take advantage of that with Argent Protectors, Blessing of Kings, Seal of Champions, and also kind of they can be really annoying by producing all these 1/1 minions as well. That's the calling card of the Paladin. Now, what are Paladins weak against? They have a tough time really taking care of one big minion, and that's where Outdoor Peacekeeper comes in. You can draft Humilities as well, but Humility is a very situational card. It's not like Outdoor, which always gives you a 3/3 body, and you could always find a use for it. Humility, there are times when you really want it, but times when you don't. So Keeper of Uldaman is kind of like a pseudo Outdoor Peacekeeper that is better in some situations and worse in others. So let's look at some situations where Keeper is good. For example, by your hero power creating a 1/1, on turn 6, you can just play hero power, Keeper of Uldaman, and get a 3/3 and a 3/4. That's really good. You're basically getting the same stats as a Boulder Fist Ogre, just split up into 2 minions, which could be good or bad. Now, what is really good about this card is it provides Paladins a common pseudo hard removal. This is you can use it against your opponent's captured Jormungars, Boulder Fist Ogres, Force Tank Max, and suddenly for 4 mana you create a dominant situation. You're 3/4 versus their 3/3, so you gain in terms of mana because they will probably spend like 6, 7, or 8 mana on their creature. You only spend 4. So you gain a tempo lead, and it's something, like I said, that's not currently in the toolbox of Paladin. So just giving them this and giving them this new toy to play with, I think is so powerful.
Yeah, yeah. This is why I think it's very much the biggest game changer outside of warrior class cards that we have seen. And I'm not sure, I'm not as high on this card as you are, obviously, but I do completely agree that this is a game changer, because that it's essentially another Aldor Peacekeeper or Humility, but common, but not as good. And I think the key for people evaluating this isn't to look at the situation where your opponent has a 1/1 and you may have to buff it to a 3/3. It's that worst comes to worst, you just hero power and buff your own minion to be a 3/3. So even at the lowest floor, when this card gets the lowest value that it can get, it is a 6 mana for a 3/4 and a 3/3, which is still good value.
Yep.
And once you realize that, you can see that this card, from that point on, only has upside.
Yes.
And the upside isn't, it's not destroy your opponent's minion or anything crazy like that. Your opponent will still have those divine shields, they'll still have the death rattles, they'll still have the abilities, but it does make the stat distribution on your opponent's minions very, very friendly to you. And you can use it kind of as a spell, and I think you should use it as a spell before one of your minions, efficiently removes your opponent's minions as well. So we'll see how it works in practice. It's kind of a hard card to judge in a vacuum because it's going to be so flexible, and it's going to be so it's very much a pro card.
Yes, I agree.
So it'll depend, right? And I know I'm 100% sure I'll mess up with it my fair share of times when I first start using it. But the upside is there. The upside is there, and the downside is very little. So let's move on to another class that's getting a, not a game changer, I don't think, but a very good card. And it is a Mounted Raptor for the Druid. So this is a common card. It is another beast, so Druid gets one more common beast. If you're worried about the TGT bonus going away and Druid not seeing as many beasts anymore, no need to worry. The Mounted Raptor's here. It is a 3 mana 3/2 with a death rattle that says summon a random 1-cost minion. Now, a random 1-cost minion we have a lot of experience with because of Hungry Dragon. Only now, instead of summoning it for your opponent, you summon it for yourself. So you generally get a 2/1. Sometimes you get a 1/1. Rarely you'll get a 1/2 or something ridiculous like a 2/4 or a 3/2 or a 2/3. Argent Squires pop up now and then to screw with you. But generally, the 1-cost random minion is going to be better than the body that a Harvest Golem leaves behind, which is a 2/1 mech. You're taking a risk, because you could get totally screwed with it. But, and it's even worse because your opponent's going to have the first shot to see your random minion. But your opponent also doesn't really want to remove this. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Your opponent wants to remove it so it sees the random minion so it can deal with it first. But at the same time, your opponent really doesn't want to remove anything with a death rattle to begin with. And what I think, so we're going to rate this card higher than a Harvest Golem. Not just because it's a beast, but because a 3/2 is just better than a 2/3 after turn 2. We rate Crocs and River and Bloodfen Raptors the same, but that's because you can put those out on turn 2. After turn 2, 3/2s are just better, and this cannot be played on turn 2, so it has to be played on turn 3 or later. So that's where I think it gets the edge.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very good card. I do agree. It's not going to be a game changer. And that's kind of the theme with this expansion. There's not going to be any monumental shifts, I think. I could be wrong, but I think this was a very tempered expansion in that they made sure that there was not one card that was extremely overpowered, and they just wanted to give classes a couple new things to play with and just kind of push the game along, and also ensure that we have a fun new mechanic to play with as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, totally agree. So I don't think there's much to say about it besides that it's a powerful card.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's move on to another common class card that's coming next week. All these common class cards. And this one's a fun one. It is the Fierce Monkey. It is Warrior. It is a 3 mana, 3/4 beast, and it has Taunt. So, just pure power creep on a Ironfur Grizzly. And it is a Warrior class card. So, it's one of the Blizzard's initiative and response to hashtag Arena Warriors Matter to actually help warriors in the arena. Very much appreciated, very much needed, and it's really good. I think that Blizzard has stepped up and created these cards, and it also fits in with what Blizzard's trying to do with the warrior, right? Which is to make it a class that's focused on taunts and things that synergize with taunts. So I'm a big fan of this card. Just how good, like I don't think anyone could debate that this card's a great card.
Yes.
Just how good is this card, and just how much will it actually help the warrior?
Oh, that's a good question. And part of that, you also have to ask, well, where is the warrior right now, right? If it is so low and the warrior is almost hopeless, even giving it a premium card won't shift it that much. I think.
And remember, we also have Obsidian Destroyer that came out last wing that's already out, that I have yet to see in the arena, and I haven't played a warrior yet in the arena. But I have faced a couple of warriors, and none of them had the Obsidian Destroyer. So maybe my bad luck, or maybe they just didn't draw it, or maybe it's actually kind of clunky to play, and they never found a chance to play it. So I don't really know. But this is not the only one. Anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so the Fierce Monkey, one good thing about the card is that it is an early game play, and the fact that it's a 3 mana, 3/4 taunt, that's extremely powerful because we rate Senjin Shieldmaster fairly high. And Senjin Shieldmaster is an understated card. For 4 mana, you should be getting a 4/5 or a 5/4. But the Senjin just has a good stat distribution. Here, though, one turn earlier, all you're missing is 1 HP, but you're keeping the same attack. That is so powerful because a lot of times what would happen is, you're kind of like trading back and forth, but then once the Fierce Monkey comes out, that just stops right there. Suddenly your options are very limited. And in the early game, your options are pretty limited anyways. So there's just this kind of like back and forth until you reach like turn 4 or turn 5, and then the game opens up and, a lot of plays are available. But this just kind of stops like your opponent's turn 2 move in their tracks, and it really changes the board, and it shapes the board a turn earlier. Like the Senjin coming out on turn 4 lots of times is really annoying. This should be even more annoying, and it's just missing 1 stat, so we are going to be rating it quite high.
Yeah, and it also has a side benefit, as we found out when doing another card. So there's a card, and I'm going to preview it right now. We'll talk about it later. It's called Tomb Spider. It's 4 mana, 3/3. It's a beast. It's a common neutral. All classes get it. And its battle cry is Discover a Beast. So it's like an Azure Drake without the spell power, but for 1 cost lower and for, -1/-1. And the thing that you discover, instead of drawing a card from your deck, you discover a beast. Now, discover mechanics, as we found out, favor class cards, which is normally not an issue, right? What class has like beasts besides druids and hunters, and they're going to get some bonuses for it. But now warriors also have a beast, and it is the only beast of the warrior. So, and it is really good. So now you're in a situation where the fact that it's a beast may not generally matter. You're not going to see, God, I can't remember the guy's name, Hemet. You're not going to see Hemet. He's a legendary, and he removes a beast from the board. You're not going to see that, but you are going to draft Tomb Spiders now and then, and they'll give you chances to get more Fierce Monkeys. It's an interesting dynamic that Blizzard has built in. I think I'm going to really enjoy it, and it makes things very complicated, which is good, because LOE, for all of its seemingly casualness, just because the cards in general are not terribly good, it encourages a lot of pro plays. Like, we said it before, the Discover mechanic does RNG the right way, and a lot of these cards are also very interesting in a way that you have to think about them.
Yep, definitely. And look, with all of these cards as well, we're kind of assuming it based on incomplete information right now. And I am eagerly awaiting kind of the true numbers from Discover. But until then, I think we have a pretty good idea of exactly how powerful these cards are by themselves, or so I like to think.
Yep. Let's move on to the next card. There's so many. Like, one thing I noticed, and you can just see by looking at all these cards, is that this Wing 2 is really focused on common class cards. Like, there's just so many of them. The next one we're going to do is, and they're very good, right? We just went with 3 cards, and all of them we said were very good.
Yes,
Keeper of
definitely.
Oldamon, Mounted Raptor, Fierce Monkey. And now we are on to Ethereal Conjurer, which is a mage common. 5 mana, 6/3 distribution, so not ideal, but with a battle cry that says discover a spell. Merps.
It's interesting that you're throwing this to me because you were the one who sold me on this in the first place. And I think you're absolutely correct. This is a very good card, very good card. And I think it's easy to look at it and say, and just dismiss it because it's a 5 mana minion with 3 health. And you can look at it as 2 weak. It basically dies to a lot of 2-drops even, and you can focus on that, or you could focus on the fact that it's basically a better Azure Drake. Azure Drake, 5 mana for a 4/4 body. So this is even one more stat than an Azure Drake. You can argue whether the distribution is better or worse, but a lot of times a 6/3, if you're putting it on an empty board, that is really good. Or if you're just a little bit ahead. And by discovering a spell, guaranteeing that it's a mage spell, I think it's better than the draw that you get out of your deck from the Azure Drake, just because a spell has initiative. You're always able to do something with it. And the mage has quite a few good spells that you can use, like a charge almost. Flame Cannon, Frostbolt, Fireball, and all of their AoEs as well. So this is just a very good card that also fits into the mage's play style, which is kind of slow it down, control the board, gain card advantage, and then just win using that advantage.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I do think that the one part of that I disagree with is that you think this is better on an empty board than on a contested board. I think the 6/3 stat distribution on an empty board is actually kind of vulnerable to your opponent just flooding the board, and then your 6 damage will get nothing except some face damage before he removes it. I really like it when your opponent has put down a minion with 6 health or below, which is usually what the case if your opponent just puts down 1 minion, right? Like, imagine your opponent on turn 4 or turn 5 plays any minion that that you would normally think of. It will have no more than 6 health.
Yeah.
Like, Oasis Snapdraw aside, right? Like, it's not going to have more than 6 health. So if they just play one single large minion on those turns, you respond with the Ethereal Conjurer. You not only get a free spell, but you get an even trade. So you're not even falling behind on this. Like, 6 attack for 5 mana is just really, really good, period. To get even higher, you would have to be at, like, Salty Dog territory, right? Where you're, like, all in on the card.
Yeah.
So I really like the 6 attack for its mana cost.
Yeah, I do too. It's a card that I know people will disagree with, and some people. It's very easy to focus on the drawbacks because these are drawbacks that people have learned to kind of avoid. High attack, very low health. But I think for a class like the Mage, it can not only get away with it, it can really take advantage of the all the nuances of this card, from the stat distribution to the card draw to its pool of high quality spells.
Yeah, or even like you play it on turn 6, right? What's your opponent going to do? Flood the board into your Flame Strike?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, there's so many ways to position the board as the Mage. It's really a very good class for this kind of card. And it preserves card advantage, and Mage always has a card advantage win condition because of its hero power, not taking damage to the face.
Yep.
So this is an insanely powerful card. I I think it might end up being the best card that we see in this entire expansion, but we'll
Nope.
see.
Keeper of Oldman.
Not even close. Keeper of Oldemon is not even close to how good this card is. Okay, and let's move on to the last common class card that's released in this next wing. It's a Tunnel Trog. It's a Shaman card, 1 mana, 1/3 stat distribution, and its text says, whenever you overload, gain +1 attack per locked mana crystal. So I'll go and cover this, because I think we both, like, if we were to like assess ourselves, and we assess ourselves a lot on what we're good at and what we're not good at, one of the things we are the least good at right now is playing Shaman. I think comparatively to other Infinite Arena players, it's probably both of our like weakest points. And one of the things that, and so I've been talking to a lot of Infinite Arena players about the Shaman and about what they do, and on first glance, it looks kind of like a mana worm, right? Only instead of spell, it's overload. Half of the shaman spells have overload anyway, and then a whole bunch of minions also have overload. So in terms of your percent chance of having a card in your hand that can trigger it, it's about the same as a mana worm. But what you're missing here is that you can't. The coin doesn't do anything, and the coin is so huge to the mana worm's value.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, it's easy to see how the mana worm is really good because you pair it up with not only the coin but also the flexible options and kind of combos that you can have with something like, let's say, Sorcerer's Apprentice, right? And also, there are many cheap spells floating around in the arena now. Spare parts, tons of spare parts. So spare parts are a good way to activate that as well. But at the same time, there are on-curve ways to activate the Trog as well, right? Like Totem Golem or Stormforged Axe.
Yep.
Yeah.
There are definitely powerful combos, but that's what they are. They're kind of combos. Where this card is going to kind of shine, and I think this is an underappreciated part of this card's game, is not on turn 1, but rather because Shamans used to be in Classic, right? They were so good at flipping the board. It was one of the few ways you can cheat mana on a turn. And then not only do you cheat mana and flip the board, because part of flipping the board isn't like removing all of your opponent's stuff. It's also getting on the board so that you have the initiative the next turn. And so Shaman used to be one of the few classes that can do it, along with Rogue. Now all classes kind of have a way to do it, but Rogue is still very superior with it. And Shaman has kind of lost that ability. It has still a lot of ways to cheat mana to pass it on, but those things are less and less spells and are more and more minions, which don't quite, because minions don't have initiative and spells do, so they don't quite flip the board as much. You add some dilution, and the clash just kind of feels a bit different. Tunnel Trog adds back that kind of thing. It's only 1 mana, so whenever you're about to use an overload card, you can put it out, and then it becomes easily like a 3/3 for 1 mana. And no extra overload on your next turn even. So it's a very good card even in the mid to late game for flipping the board.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good card. Nothing amazing about it, but it will get drafted, it will see play, and it will definitely affect games.
Yep. Okay, so let's move on to some of the lesser seen cards. We're going to go with, let's just do all the class cards first.
Sure.
Unearth Raptor is a rogue card. It is a rare card, and we've seen the Fierce Monkey. We know about Dark Cultist. Now there's also Spellslinger, and it seems like Rogue is getting its 3/4 for 3.
Yeah.
It's not a common, but it is this Unearth Raptor, and it has its effect, which is kind of a weird effect for Rogue, I think, flavor-wise, but maybe it makes sense. And it's a battle cry that says, choose a friendly minion, gain a copy of its Death Rattle effect. So what do you think about this card?
It is quite different than what the Rogue is used to, because this is an extra value card, but a slower extra value card. And what I mean is that a lot of the extra value cards that the Rogue has, stuff like Undercity Valiant, or stuff like Defias, those or like SI7. I think that's a good
Hmm.
comparison because it's also a rare 3 mana card. Those get you that little extra bonus right away. And some of them have combo requirements, but this is one of the few rogue cards that gives you a bonus, but doesn't give it to you right away. You copy a Death Rattle, and Death Rattles are really good. Haunted Creeper is really good. Sludge Belcher is good as well. Piloted Shredder, fantastic.
Hmm.
And the overall body is very good. I think the comparison to Dark Cultist is fair. It's basically a good statted 3-drop with a pretty big upside. So I think the card overall is quite nice, and it is just very strange seeing a rogue card with extra value, but delayed extra value, not immediate extra
Yeah.
value.
Yeah, and like we're talking about all these good rogue cards, right? They all share the same thing, which is that they give you initiative. You can
Yes.
hit something for 1 damage now. You can up your weapon's attack by a little bit. You can backstab for no mana. Like just little pricks here and there, right? Like almost like a million needles like coming at you from all these different directions, especially with the coins and the combo effects. And so just like to keep you off balance and make sure you never kind of do what you want to do. That's not what Unearthed Raptor does at all. It's a super solidly valued minion. Its battle cry isn't even going to trigger when you play it on turn 3. If you play it on turn 3, unless it's the Haunted Creeper, right? Very few things, like or like a Loot Hoarder. Very few things
Basically.
are going to survive your turn 2 and have a Death Rattle effect. But later on in the game, it can copy, potentially a pretty good Death Rattle effect. So in the arena, it's obviously a good card. It's the 3 mana 3/4. It has an extra ability. It's nowhere near the Fierce Monkey. But I think this is one of those cards because we all know that Blizzard designs expansions like one expansion beforehand, right? Like they already know what's in the next expansion now that this
Yes.
expansion is coming out. When TGT came out, they already knew these cards were going to be in here, and there wasn't going to be like that much changing stuff around. So I think this was pre-Patron nerf. I mean, not Patron, pre-Warsong Commander nerf. There were no rogues. Rogues were not viable constructed, and they wanted to bring this like more tempo rogue kind of effect into the constructed meta, and they were willing to sacrifice some kind of like flavor, right, for what the rogues typically do, because it just at the time it wasn't really working in constructed. Oil Rogue wasn't doing well at all. With Patron Gun, now Oil Rogue is doing pretty okay. You saw it a lot in BlizzCon tournaments. They're visible in the ladder now, but this card still made it through. Not necessarily that it's great for Oil Rogue, but in the idea that Blizzard wanted some kind of more tempo-y rogue to be a viable concept.
Yeah, definitely. And as for the arena, you're always pretty happy if you're picking this. It's got good stats, and you're bound to pick a couple of Death Rattle minions, so there's just pure upside. And if you drop
Yeah.
it as a vanilla minion, okay, you just dropped a Spider Tank, which everyone is pretty happy about.
Yep. Totally agree. Next card is a Reliquary Seeker. Is that how you pronounce that word? Reliquary?
I'm just gonna leave it up to you.
Okay. We'll go with Reliquary then. It's a 1 mana 1/1 Warlock card, and it is a rare. And it has a battle cry that says
Oh gosh.
if you have 6 other minions, gain +4/+4. So now, to be fair and constructed, this could very easily happen, right? Like if you structure your deck in a certain way. Put some like 0 mana wisps in your deck, put some haunted creepers in your deck, you have implosions. It's doable. What about the arena, Merps? Are we ever going to see this trigger? And if it triggers, do you instantly lose the game, or what do you do?
I'm very happy that this is not a demon, so it's not bringing down Bane of Doom. I will just say that. Um, this is quite terrible, and I am not exactly sure what the thought process was behind it. I guess in some niche constructed deck, it could see some play, but what you do, all right, so you're asking me here's what do you do, Merps? And here's what you do. When you see this card, you don't pick it. That's basically what you do. And that's my honest advice. There are very few cards that are worse. This condition is so hard to meet. And it's
Yeah.
really like if you have 6 other minions, you probably won. And if you have 6 other minions and you don't win, it's because the other side had a quality consecrate. So this isn't helping you at all there.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Totally agree. We can just move on from this card.
Yep.
Now, the fun one, Excavated Evil. Priest card. 5 mana spell. Deal 3 damage to all minions. Which is normally like a Hellfire for 4 mana, just for reference. Shuffle this card into your opponent's deck. So then your opponent gets this in his deck that he may draw later. Now, this doesn't, unlike Hellfire, it doesn't deal damage to you or your opponent, but all minions. So it's 1 mana more. I can't say that it has an upside. It seems like it has a downside. But it's a Priest card, and Priest doesn't really have this ability to deal 3 damage to all minions yet. Besides maybe like Dark Bomb, a Light Bomb, I mean.
Yeah. So the only thing basically keeping this card from being a really bad card, because, a little bit of a spoiler, we have it rated fairly average. But the only reason that this card is not terrible is because Holy Nova exists. And what I mean by that is you keep on expecting the 2 damage AoE. And so how many times have we left like half of our board or more than half of our board at 3 HP? Like everything is at 3 HP.
And then we forget that our opponent still has a Valence minion on the board. And it's
well,
GG.
maybe you do. Perhaps you do. But with Excavated Evil, now you have to think twice about it a little bit. And it's a rare card. But you have to ask yourself, well, how many times do I play around Blizzard when you face a mage? That's kind of the same amount that you have to play around Excavated Evil, which is not a lot. But in the back of your head, you're always thinking, oh man, that could really sink me right now.
Yeah.
And as for Excavated Evil, the fact that you shuffle that card into your opponent's deck, that could be really good if you're facing down a very aggressive deck, because you deny them a draw. If they're an aggressive deck, this is a completely dead card for them. So there are bonuses to that. But other than that, like, it's a very clunky card. 5 mana for 3 damage AoE, that is not fantastic, especially to all minions. And as a priest, you really want to grab the board. And you can come back by just kind of, clearing...
Excavating some evils.
Yes, you could try to win the game by doing that. But that's a risky proposition. And if you're counting on that, you're basically counting on getting behind and then coming back. So if you want a dramatic storyline, Excavated Evil can help you there. But otherwise, it's not a great card.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I like about it is that it brings more consistency to Priest mass removals. And Priest really feels like a class that needs mass removals because it always finds itself behind on the board. So I like it. Like, Recycle, right? It's 6 mana, and you give your opponent the card you don't want to see, back into their deck, when 5 mana you can just assassinate. But it's still a really good card because Druid had no real good way to just remove something off the board before that.
Yep.
This is a little less so, but it has that kind of same effect, and we're hating on it a bit. But I can see this card. I think this is one of the candidates where we would have undervalued it. Like, it is possible that just you play with it a couple times, you get it used against you a couple times, you're just like, oh, well, this card's actually a 60.
Yeah.
I think that's very much possible. Like, if I were to pick a card that I can already foresee possibly having misvalued, this may be it. But we'll stick with our values because it's really hard to see how the meta reacts to it, right? How many people play around it, and just how often it is, right? You're a priest, you drop 1 big minion, your opponent floods the board and has 3 mana, right? That situation.
Yep.
Okay, so now we go back to... Before we cover the legend, let's cover the legendary first, and then we go to the card, the single neutral card that is going to be released in Wing 2. The only neutral card besides this legendary is a neutral common called Tomb Spider, and we covered it a little bit, but we're going to go in depth with it afterwards. For now, let's do Brand Bronzebeard. It's a legendary. It's a 3 mana 2/4, and the text says your battle cries triggered twice.
Yep. It's okay.
Moving on. No, so one thing I want to point out is that your battle cries trigger twice. That's actually going to trigger a lot just because there's a lot of battle cries in this game. But the number of times it triggers and it's actually useful is going to be fairly low. Because let's say you have a battle cry that says like, I don't know, deal deal 2 damage to an undamaged minion, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
You have a Dark Iron Skulker. Well, it's not going to do that twice. Nor do you care if it does it twice. Like, you may have something else where the battle cry says like, I don't know, remove a minion from the board. Well, it's not going to trigger twice, right? Like freeze a minion. Sure, you'll freeze it twice on the same turn. What does it do? Nothing. And some battle cries are downright bad. Yeah, you get an injured Blade Master. Well, now it's a dead Blade Master, right? Like, it's going to trigger, but the actual effectiveness is much less than, oh, a lot of my cards have battle cries.
Yes, definitely.
So we'll just move on to Tomb Spider. 4 mana, 3/3, common, neutral, beast. Battle cry, discover a beast. It is the smaller version of Azure Drake. Just how good is this card? Is it as good as an Azure Drake? Why yes? Why no? How does it affect hunters and druids?
Oh, so unfortunately, neutral beasts are not very good. We actually crunched the numbers on this last night. So if you look at neutral beasts, and hopefully we didn't miss any, but there should be 25 neutral beasts. And if you compare those beasts with our tier score, the average score is a 47.2. That's pretty bad. Neutral beasts...
That's below the average card.
Yes, that is below the average card. So if you look at your typical 2-drop beasts like Croc and Raptor, those are about 52, 54-ish, which is higher. So there are some pretty bad neutral beasts in this game.
And
so that's
even beyond that, right? Like most of the beasts are on the small side.
Yes.
So when you're spending 4 mana, that's really like, I don't care how good your like Croc is on turn 2. It's an awful card to get on turn 4.
Yes.
Like it's not a 52 on turn 4. It's like a 30.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But like you said, the story changes once we go look at Druid and Hunter, in which they not only have good class beasts, they also synergize with beasts. So it's it's doubly good for them. Druid, that is that is pretty much the best class, because if you look at the 4 class beasts that they have, it averages out to a 70.5, and a lot of that comes from Savage Combatant, and being able to have increased chance to grab a Savage Combatant is really good.
Yeah, it's really good.
This is some deep analysis here. Really good analysis.
Savage Combatant good. Chances to get more Savage Combatants really good.
Indeed.
And also druids have what are their other 2 beasts, right? Like one's like Malorn, right, which is incredible, and the other one is, they have one more beast.
I don't remember off the top of my head. So remember, guys, spell beasts do not count,
Right.
or ones that are not beasts but turn into beasts also do not count. So
no Druid of the Claw, no Druid of the Flame, no Power of the Wild.
Yes.
I forget what that beast is, but I remember it was really good too.
Yeah.
Just take our word for it. It was really good.
Just trust us, guys. It was good. As for Hunters.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We're stupid. It's Mounted Raptor, because we just covered it, and it's really good.
Oh gosh. Anyways, moving on to the Hunter. The Hunter has a lot more cards. It has 15 beasts, and it basically averages out to a 56.4. So pretty good, significantly above neutral beasts. And really where it shines is Hunters have a lot of use for beasts, right?
Yep.
Everything from Kill Command, Houndmaster, even Ram Wrangler, just they have the synergies, and so does Druid as well. You know, they have some synergy,
Right.
basically a synergy.
And so this way you
um,
get two of them, right? You get the Tomb Spider, which is a beast, and then you get another
yes,
beast that goes in your hand for next time.
yeah. So Tomb Spider, bottom line for normal classes, you're not that happy to grab a beast because neutral beasts, as you've seen from the numbers, are just not that good.
Hmm.
But for Druid and for Hunter, pretty good. And that's reflected in the tier list. So if you guys are curious, you can go over to the tier list, see the scores that we assigned them, and see if we're right or if we're wrong. But this is our thought process right now.
Yep. That about covers all of the cards we're going to see in the next wing. So that's what this episode is focused on for the Lightforge. The next Lightforge will not be doing Wing 3 because Wing 3 is not coming out the week after next week due to Thanksgiving in the US. So it's going to come out a week after that. So we'll do like a more normal Lightforge episode, and we may have a guest next week as well. So if you guys are wondering, I think we announced that Crip is probably going to be on today, and he couldn't make it because of a conflict, but he'll be on next month, and we'll work that out. But we're hoping to get another guest on maybe next week to bridge the gap. And also, if you want to hear more discussion with this, or if you just want to talk with other like-minded arena players about these cards, about LOE, about anything, we have our own subreddit now, which is reddit.com/r/grinning goat. The /r means it's a subreddit. So it's our own Grinning Goat subreddit. We can talk about all of our content. If you have a question, we'll answer there. We read all the posts there, and it's just nice to try to build a community and have easy way for people to reach us. And a lot of our community members also are very good at the arena, and they'll also answer a lot of questions as well. And also, along the same veins, reddit.com/r/arenahs is the general arena related subreddit, and it's still in a growing phase, but there's a lot of good arena players, and then we're not the only arena experts that check that site either. We'll all put our comments and look at the posts, and just if you have any questions or want to find a community to discuss this kind of stuff, those are the places we recommend.
Yep.
Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about what we're going to do right after this Lightforge, which is the Arena Coup, as usual. And this week, the class is Hunter.
Mm-hmm. All
I
right.
don't know about you, but you go ahead.
No, you go. I thought you were gonna ask me because you want my opinion on everything, obviously.
We'll get your opinion after I talk about how much I like to play the Hunter right now. I think this
Fine.
is perfect timing for the Hunter, and if you have some kind of a weird policy the way we do, which is that you want to play all classes evenly, get your Hunter runs out of the way. The meta is currently speeding up, so it's not necessarily in the short term, right? Maybe in a month it'll be slow again, but for now, it's kind of a fast meta, and the Hunters are about to get some cards that are not very good. So get it out of the way now, and so you don't have to play the Hunter later. Because LOE is not going to be kind to the Hunter in terms of card quality. So what do you expect in this current meta for our Hunter run, Merps?
Go fast, go aggressive, and play to the hunter's strengths. I think that with the basically with the TGT bonus gone, if you have
Mm-hmm.
any chance of getting those smaller cards, such as web spinners or such as Glaivezuka, go for those. I think with Hunter, the most important thing is curve. I tend to think that the most successful Hunter decks are the ones that play very, very aggressively. I don't really believe in a control style Hunter. I think it could work with the right deck, but it's so rare to get
Unleash
that
the
deck.
Hounds.
Unleash is good. Unleash is good for any sort of format. You can play a control format. You can play an aggressive format. Unleash is just a good card, period. But I think if you want to play Hunter successfully, you really have to push the tempo and make that switch and really know exactly how much face damage to inflict to ensure the win, because you're going to have less cards than your opponent, and most of the time you're going to win with like one or no cards in your hand, and your opponent will have like 5 to 6 cards in their hand.
So when you say you're going to have less cards, I think what that means is in the late game, your hero power doesn't add any card advantage. It doesn't do anything on the board. It just deals face damage. So if the game drags on, even if you have the same mid-rangey deck your opponent does, between all the hero powers, your opponent's going to get a very significant edge on you. Just because of that. So there has to be a face element to every hunter. Now, I play Hunter quite differently and also have a lot of success with Hunter as well. And I'm fully fine with a mid-range Hunter and even a combo-y control Hunter. Now, the combo-y control Hunter didn't really work in TGT at all. Like, not at all. Like, it just died off. And that's because a lot of the combo parts are not TGT cards, and so the dilution made it really bad with the 25%, but now that's gone. So the Control Hunter kind of like is making I think it makes a small gain in viability.
Yeah.
And TGT was also really bad for any kind of late game Hunter because it uses the hero power, right? And when you use the hero power with an Inspire mechanic, you have 2 goals. One is that you have to use the hero power every turn, and 2 is you have to protect the thing that has the Inspire mechanic on it. And the only way you protect things with the Inspire mechanic on it is trading. So TGT, for the late game, for the control style, just kept encouraging and kept giving you cards that pushed you into this style where you're not hitting the face. And you can play a control style and still hit face by just having more card advantage as well. Like, you don't necessarily, in the normal way of doing things, right? You can just keep putting down really large minions and keep going face. And so that's a more mid-rangey style that still works to the Hunter's strengths. TGT encouraged something totally different. And so the dilution, the lack of that plus 25% TGT offering rate that's happening right now, that also makes, I think, the mid-range to like even a little slower Hunter more viable than it was in TGT. So, I mean, I agree that like late game mid-range Hunters and control Hunters were just bad in TGT, but I think they're going to be a little bit better right now than they used to be. I'm not going to go out and say that, you know, they're going to be better than a more aggressive Hunter, especially with the LOE comeback. But Unleash the Hounds makes a lot of things work. It depends on what you get, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And just to know, like, Unleash the Hounds is not it's not just coming back because of the offering rates. It's also coming back because of Druid Scarab. Because Druid Scarab gives you a very good shot at Unleash the Hounds, or one of, you know, many other really good control cards for a Hunter.
Yep, I'm looking forward to seeing how Hunter plays out. You know, personally, it is one of my favorite classes, and I love to play that like tempo aggro control style. And I'm still waiting for the day in which I think control Hunter can work, but right now in the arena, that's pretty tough. But like we talked about with the Explorer's Hat, and I think they're just a couple of cards or a couple of steps away from being able to play a new style, and that's very exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And it wouldn't be a new style. It was a style that was super, super popular, if you remember, last year over the summer before they nerfed Unleash the Hounds and Buzzard.
Yeah, it was.
Like, that was the height of Control Hunter in the arena, where you kind of just like do stuff in the beginning and you don't really care, and then you Buzzard Unleash and the game was over because you had 20 more cards than your opponent. Like, he needed to finish you off immediately, or else you just had the game. Like, throw in a Hunter's Mark here or there, add in a Scavenging Hyena.
Those were not fun times.
Those were not, because that was like, every time you're facing a Hunter, you're like sweating bullets for dropping any minions on the board.
Yep.
But that's the kind of control Hunter style that could make a comeback in a less annoying fashion, maybe. All right, well, that's it from us. This is the LOE Wing 2 review, which is coming out, available to you next, or when you're watching this Thursday. Those cards will be released, and once those cards are released, if you want to know the exact tier scores that we give to each class, check out our tier list again at ggoatgaming.com/tier list. There's also going to be a Google Docs link there if you want to, fiddle around with it yourself. So that's it from us. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. Have fun in the new expansion, guys.
See you next week.